Welcome back to another episode of the Up Watching Hawaii podcast. I'm your immaculate host, Ski Master Murphy, aka OG Smurf 826. And hey, back with another episode. I'm here, putting it out daily, no matter what happens. Celebrated my birthday today. That's what the 826 stands for. And this is coming the day after my birthday. That's just how I record. And interestingly enough, the topic of the day, I promise you guys, this is not going to become the random guy on the internet's thoughts on NIL podcast. I promise I'm not going to make every episode about NIL dealings, but it's my birthday. I am a University of Michigan alumni. We had a great year last year. We've been chugging along for a long time trying to get to where we are. I was literally on campus, a student, when Harbaugh was named head coach, and we made that change. I even still have some of the last bits of Adidas University of Michigan gear because we switched over to Team Jordan. So yeah, I was there for the beginning, and oh, what a glorious end to the Harbaugh coaching leadership. Bar barring the stuff, the stuff that's out there. I'll have another podcast about episode why about I believe we need a commissioner of college football and probably each sport just so stuff like Connor Stallions and recruiting violations can be handled quickly and swiftly. Regardless of if it's a team or coach I like or despise, we need to handle this stuff more quickly. But as the University of Michigan alumni, a very good report today came out about our rivals, about the good old Ohio State Buckeyes. And well, the big thing, as I said, I'm not going to make this the NIL podcast, but hey, they just put it out. Good old Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes alumni have given this man 20 million this year in NIL money to fill out his roster and get his players. Which, strangely enough, 2 years ago he stated to the boosters and alumni, hey, if we want to keep this train rolling, we need $13 million in the pot of NIL money to keep this train rolling for this team and keep this roster we got. And everybody thought, man, that's a crazy amount of money for him to be asking for. But look at us, 2 years later, and we are looking at 20 million to be given out to all his players. Which I did a little bit of looking and almost equals out close to what all his players made made who have been drafted over the past 2 seasons for 2024 and 2023. That's about all their total amounts in their first year contract. So he's paying the amount of basically paying his draft picks right now, but I don't know exactly how all the money's perfectly divvied up. I know there's some more stuff out there, but I just think it's interesting how much money we know that Ohio State, Ryan Day, they're at 20 million. If honestly, if Ohio State's at 20 million, I feel like Texas is at 30 because the University of Texas has always been the money thrower, and Texas has a lot of not just the University of Texas, but Texas as a state period, a lot of oil money and stuff around there, and yeah, it can get hectic. I just think the amount of money we are throwing around now, it's only going to keep increasing. So much so that I think also the 20 million number is interesting because in this off season, the boosters are saying they wanted to give 15 to 20 million just to Marvin Harrison Jr. alone for him to come back and keep playing because he objectively the kid's an otherworldly talent at wide receiver. He is fucking insane. But looking at how much they wanted to pay one player versus how that same amount of money is being spent on the whole roster is insane. And also knowing that the top draft pick this year, the average value of the rookie contract being the number one overall pick is 10 million a year. So in retrospect, it could have been it could have been money on the table for Marvin Harrison Jr. to play one more year, but guys don't risk getting injured, and you never know if the university is going to pay up the draft pick protection insurance, which is a real thing. Yeah, if guys get hurt playing their prospective sports, being convinced to come back for another year. Basically, the school takes out an insurance policy that'll be paid out if, for some reason, their play on the field or injury makes them drop back from where they were projected to go. And that'll be based on just overall projection and where they were projected to go in terms of which number at their position off the board they were expected to be. Like, say, thinking, oh, Justin Ross. Justin Ross, wide receiver for Clemson. If you remember that Clemson game where Trevor Lawrence was a freshman and they played against Alabama in national championship, and that one wide receiver just went off on them, that was Justin Ross. And while he suffered a very unfortunate neck injury that required surgery for his neck and spine, and yeah, you took a guy whose freshman year played a national championship game. Everything said, hey, this kid is going to be a first round draft pick, top 10 more than likely. Injury sustained from playing football, and then he falls all the way to being undrafted. So yeah, that's the kind of draft pick protection that I'm talking about, which I believe he still is on the Kansas City Chiefs roster, which, hey, very fortunate for him. Very great that he's able to still play. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about in terms of money. But let me get back and focus. Ooh, sorry if I go on these wild tangents, but back to Ohio State and 20 million, or just any team with 20 million. Do I think us at Michigan are spending 20 million? No, because we have the Michigan way, Michigan man type of situation. And so, we're paying money, but we're probably not touching 20 million. I would say maybe if I had to estimate, we're probably in the 12 to 13 million range, maybe. But seeing these schools are really in a monetary foot race to spend as much money as possible to see if they can win is sort of going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back because how much money are these teams going to keep spending to no avail? I mean, we saw the biggest fallout this past season with Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher, where I believe he still due. Well, technically, at his firing, will still do 76 million, I believe. $76 million just to pay him, and this is after back-to-back seasons of him having the number one rated recruiting class, or like 4 seasons in a row, like his recruiting class is top five, and getting the results that were not great. I believe, yeah, the Chargers broke the camel's back because there was too much money being spent. And now I also look at this with Ryan Day, and even as a professional Ohio State Buckeyes football team hater, objectively speaking, and as a fan of Michigan, and also on the third side as a fan of college football in general, there's no reason to fire Ryan Day. I mean, they are throwing all this money and giving him all this stuff. He's getting paid $10 million a year, and he has contract incentives, which should be there. Like, hey, you win championships. Hey, we're gonna pay you a little bit more. But I will say, like, he's a great coach. I mean, honestly, in your heart of hearts, if you look at his coaching record, he, I'm not even gonna include when he like took over the end of the season during Urban Meyer's sort of fall off and once again, oh, I'm having health problems, but it's really, hiding the fact there is some strange dealings that he's been doing behind closed doors and behind the table. So if you look at his Friday's overall record, the man is 53-8, his overall coaching record. So 53-8. Let's talk about what that is. If you wanted me to count his losses, excluding they counted as his first season where he took over Urban Meyer at the end. But let's talk about it from all 8 of his losses. Just to let you guys know how good of a coach he is. His 8 losses over 5 seasons of coaching. One of them is, well, no, let's go. Season 1 is his loss in the semifinal to Clemson. That's season 1. 13-1, lost in the semifinal game to Clemson. Tough to get there, tough to win, right? Second season is COVID season, 2020. Is one loss? Is one loss? Is in the national championship game, in which, I mean, that game, Nick Saban opened a whole can of whoop ass on them. The year before they did play Clemson very close, so people thought, it'd be closer than it was, but unfortunately it wasn't. But hey, Ryan Day, still a good coach. First 2 seasons, you're talking about a guy. You may say, oh, he's inheriting Urban Meyer's recruits, yada yada. So at least 2 seasons in, you could say, boom. After 2 seasons, half of the recruits are all his guys. So let's talk about season 3. Season 3, he has 2 losses. First loss, week 2 against Oregon. Do you know what that Oregon was? That was the Oregon team that had that Kayvon Thibodeau led defense, in which, A, they lost a close one, 35-28. Then, end of the season, Michigan comes in, we put on the cannonball pass. So, hey, 2 losses on the season, but both of them, objectively, very good losses to very tough teams. Now, season 4. Let's talk about it. So, this is where I get to the point where it's like, uh, how do you guys really feel about this man if you guys thinking he should get fired? Because his 2 losses, end of the season loss to us at Michigan once again, right? But then they still make the college football playoff and they lose to Georgia in the semifinal, which is like, that is respectable. And that Georgia game, they were a field goal short. The field goal missed, 42-41. So it's like, hey, is this not a good team? No, it is a good team. And the team they lost to was the national champion that year. We know how tough this Georgia teams have been. So that's year 4. Now we're on to year 5. Let's go to year 5. And here we go. Honestly, year 5, 2 losses. But honestly, I'm only going to count it as one. Why I'm only going to count it as one? Because this is last season. They lose to us end of the season. Once again, there's no conference championship game for them to make anything up. So the cards fell right where you had multiple undefeated teams, and one of them did not get picked. Florida State, which they're not having a good time right now. Let's not talk about that. Them and Georgia Tech. But Ryan Day loses to us. It's the last game of the season. It was just unfortunate. And then they get the Cotton Bowl game, a non-college football, a non-playoff game against Missouri. They lose that, which is, I'm not even going to count that as a loss for Ryan Day. So realistically, in my heart of hearts, Ryan Day has 7 losses as a head coach. And we look at all those losses, it's like, hey, this guy can coach. And I mean, this last game against us, 30-24. Close. So it's like, hey, you may say, oh, he can't come up when the big time comes for it, but it's like, hey, not just for him, but also for us at Michigan. We're kind of fucked that we play this rivalry game at the end of the season and we're both always great teams. Because in the 14 playoff, that game knocks you out immediately. Because you're not going to the conference championship game. So then you just got to sit there in conference championship week, hoping the cards somehow fall in your favor for you to make the playoffs. And then we end the playoffs, you already know you're playing a tough team. You're basically playing another Michigan Ohio State game again. And that's your whole way through. It's not easy to win these games. I know 20 million is being thrown from to build a team. And some people say, oh, well, that's more than enough. Some people say that's not enough. I would just say it's like you're putting things there to make things happen. And just because you're throwing money at it doesn't mean it's guaranteed to work. And just because he's not winning a championship doesn't mean this man's a bad coach. Like Ryan Day is a great coach. He builds great teams and his teams perform extremely well. Does he have a bad run of the fucking cards? Maybe. But goddamn, it's tough to win fucking college football playoff games. And down the 12-team playoff, I would say if he does what he's been doing, he's in. He probably wins a first round game. and he'll probably win a second round game and maybe lose in the semifinals. But that'll just show you, like, hey, it's not easy to do this shit. And I don't know, as a Michigan fan, some of you Ohio State fans may be hearing this and be like, wow, it's kind of crazy hearing a Michigan fan like really stick up for Ryan Day. And it's like, yeah, I am. And it's not because he loses to us, it's because him losing to us is the only thing that keeps him out of anything. That just shows you how good he is. The only thing that's keeping him away from being, I guess, a championship coach is the fact that he's playing the championship games at the end of the season and he's losing the games at the end of the season. That's what the fuck happens in the playoffs, in the NFL, in any other sport where there's one chance in the playoffs. It's like you lose the last game of the season, you're out, unfortunately. And you can't just judge him by the fact he loses those games. But there's 20 million on the table that he's built the team with this season. And as a fan of college football and Michigan and, all of this as a whole, I hope Ryan Day does have another good season just so people can see, like, hey, he has a standing, he's keeping it there, and he has a good level. I mean, I hope as Michigan we repeat again, even though things aren't looking like they'll line up that way, but I hope they do. But if anything, even more, I hope if Ryan Day wins, loses to us, wins a college football playoff game in the round of with 12 teams where they host, then maybe loses that game to one of the teams that got a bye, the top four conference champions. I sort of hope that Ohio State does get rid of Ryan Day so that they can see actually how good of a coach Ryan Day is, and like the whole program just falls by the wayside for a few years, just so they can see how good Ryan Day is of an actual head coach, and like see, yo, we may have been too hard on this guy. Winning when all the cards at the fucking table is actually hard, and shit can be hair thin, as we've seen as I count out the scores of a few of these games. If you were listening, like keep this guy, keep throwing the money at him, and honestly, the only person you got to worry about is fucking Phil Knight in Oregon. Because if you think 20 million is a lot for your booster club to put down, Phil Knight is worth fucking billions, and he will shit on everything we have going on in college football. This ran a little longer than I expected. I'm Ski Master Murphy, aka OG Smurf 826. This is the Up Watching Hawaii podcast. Thanks for listening. Hope you come back.